The Echo in the Shadows, a tale of compassion, unveiled. In the quiet town of Elmwood, Vermont, the morning sun cast a gentle glow over the sleepy streets. Julia stood in her cozy kitchen, sipping coffee, her eyes on her son Liam playing nearby. Liam, just over 3 years old, had the bright curiosity of a child untouched by the world's shadows. His laughter usually filled their small home with warmth, a melody Julia cherished every day. "Want some juice, sweetie?" Julia asked, kneeling to meet his sparkling brown eyes. Liam nodded eagerly, but his gaze drifted past her, locking onto the window with a sudden stillness. Outside stood an old dented mailbox, abandoned by neighbors who'd moved away months ago. Julia followed his stare, puzzled, seeing nothing but the weathered metal box under a bare oak tree. "Liam, what's out there?" she asked gently, brushing his soft curls with a smile. Liam didn't answer. He pointed at the mailbox, his small face tightening with unease. His lips parted, but no sound came, just a tremble that made Julia's heart skip a beat. She shrugged it off, thinking kids often fixate on odd things, their minds weaving wild tales. "It's just a mailbox, love," she reassured, pulling him close. "Nothing to worry about." But Liam's eyes stayed glued to it, wide and wary, as if something lurked beyond her sight. Over the next few days, Julia noticed a shift. Liam's usual cheer dimmed, replaced by quiet dread. Whenever they passed the mailbox on their walks, he'd cling to her leg, his breath quickening. Sometimes he'd whimper, pressing his face into her coat, refusing to look at the rusted box. "Liam, honey, what's wrong?" Julia asked one afternoon, crouching to his level. He shook his head, mute, his tiny hand gripping hers as if she were his shield. One evening, as Julia chopped vegetables for dinner, Liam stood by the window again. His small figure was rigid, eyes fixed on the mailbox, now shadowed in the fading light. "Liam, what do you see?" she whispered, setting the knife down to join him. He turned to her, his voice a faint rasp. "The shadow man." Julia's stomach dropped, a chill racing up her spine as she peered out into the dusk. Nothing, just the mailbox, silent and ordinary, framed by swaying branches. "A shadow man?" she echoed, half laughing to ease her nerves. "It's just the dark, sweetie." But Liam's words hung heavy, and a flicker of doubt crept into her mind. From then on, the mailbox felt less like a relic and more like an unspoken threat. Julia tried to dismiss it. Kids imagine things, she told herself, over and over. Yet each time Liam shrank from it, her unease grew, a nagging whisper she couldn't silence. She'd catch herself staring at it too, wondering what her son saw in its rusted shell. "Liam, there's nothing there," she'd say, hugging him tight. "Mommy's here, okay?" He'd nod, burying his face in her shoulder, but his fear lingered like a stubborn fog. One night, Julia jolted awake from a dream, darkness pressing in, a low hum vibrating around her. In the dream, the mailbox loomed large, its door creaking open to reveal an endless void. She woke sweating, her heart pounding, the image seared into her restless mind. Glancing at Liam, asleep beside her, she sighed, willing herself to shake it off. But the dream clung, and Liam's whispered, "Shadow man," echoed in the stillness. The next morning, as they left for a walk, Liam hesitated at the door, eyes on the mailbox. "Come on, buddy, let's go see the ducks," Julia coaxed, forcing a bright tone. He didn't budge, his finger pointing shakily at the box, his face pale with dread. Julia's chest tightened. She couldn't keep pretending this was just childish fancy. As they passed the mailbox, A faint, sour smell wafted up, making her wrinkle her nose. Ugh, something's rotting, she muttered, glancing at Liam, who stared silently ahead. His eyes widened, and he tugged her hand, whispering, "Mommy, it's him." Julia froze, her gaze darting to the mailbox. Small scratches marked its side, faint but fresh. Her pulse quickened. She pulled Liam away, her mind racing with unease. "Maybe some animal got stuck," she said aloud, more to herself than to him. But the smell, the marks, and Liam's fear gnawed at her, refusing to let go. That night, unable to sleep, Julia stood by the window, staring at the mailbox under the moon. The dream flashed back, the hum, the void, and Liam's words looped in her head. She shook herself, muttering, "It's nothing," but her heart wouldn't settle. The next day, she ran into Mrs. Carter, an older neighbor, while Liam played nearby. "Mrs. Carter, that old mailbox? Ever notice anything odd about it?" Julia asked casually. The woman frowned, thoughtful. "Heard noises sometimes. Thought it was raccoons." Julia nodded, but a shiver ran through her. "Noises? Like what?" "Scratching, mostly," Mrs. Carter said. "Figured it's just critters scavenging." Julia forced a smile, thanking her, but the word scratching lodged in her mind. That evening, Liam woke crying, his voice trembling. "Mommy, the shadow man's mad." Julia pulled him close, stroking his back, but her own fear spiked sharp and cold. "It's just a dream, sweetie," she whispered, though her voice wavered. Inside, she felt a storm brewing. Liam's terror was real, and she couldn't ignore it anymore. Days passed, and Liam's fear deepened. He'd flinch at every sound from outside. One morning, as Julia poured cereal, Liam stood by the window, tears streaking his face. "Mommy, he's there," he sobbed, pointing at the mailbox with a shaking hand. Julia rushed to him, her heart pounding. "Who, Liam? Tell me what you see." He hiccuped, his voice barely audible. "The man in the box. He's hurt." Julia's blood ran cold. She held him tight, her mind spinning with dread. She wanted to dismiss it, to call it imagination, but the weight of his words crushed her. That night, restless, she heard it. A faint scratching, drifting from the mailbox. Her breath caught. She crept to the window, peering into the dark. The mailbox stood still, but the sound persisted, slow and deliberate, chilling her bones. She stepped back, heart racing, whispering, "What's out there?" The next morning, she decided she couldn't wait. She had to know the truth. She called her sister to watch Liam, then steeled herself to face the mailbox alone. Her hands shook as she approached, the sour smell stronger now, mingled with something metallic. She hesitated, then lifted the lid, her breath hitching at the sight within. A man lay crumpled inside, thin, ragged, his clothes torn, his face bruised and pale. He was alive, barely, his shallow breaths rattling in the cramped space. Julia gasped, stumbling back, then steadied herself and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. "Help! There's someone in the mailbox, alive but hurt," she stammered into the phone. Minutes later, sirens wailed as paramedics arrived, pulling the man free with careful hands. Julia watched, numb, as they loaded him onto a stretcher, his eyes flickering open briefly. She followed the ambulance to the hospital, a mix of shock and sorrow swirling inside her. At the hospital, she waited, pacing, until a doctor approached with an update. "He's malnourished, dehydrated, beaten," the doctor said. "But he's a fighter. He'll make it." Julia nodded, relief flooding her, though questions burned in her mind. "Who is he?" she asked, her voice shaky. "How did he end up there?" We don't know yet, the doctor replied. He's too weak to talk, but we'll find out. Julia sat by his bedside, watching his chest rise and fall. A stranger, yet somehow familiar. When he stirred, his eyes met hers. Hazel, weary, but alive with a faint spark. I'm Julia, she said softly. You're safe now. Can you tell me your name? Thomas, he rasped, his voice raw. Thank you. I thought I'd die there. Julia's throat tightened. She took his hand. What happened to you, Thomas? He swallowed, tears welling. My brother. He did this. Wanted me gone. Your brother? Julia echoed, horrified, her grip tightening on his hand. Thomas nodded weakly. He's after my share of the inheritance. Locked me in there. Julia's heart ached. Betrayal so cruel, abandonment so cold, it was unthinkable. I'm so sorry, she whispered. But you're not alone anymore. I'll help you. Thomas managed a faint smile, gratitude shining through his pain. You already have. Julia stayed with him, a resolve hardening within her. She wouldn't let this go unanswered. Later, she brought her husband, Mark, to meet Thomas, sharing the harrowing tale. Mark's jaw clenched as he listened. His own brother? That's monstrous. Julia nodded. He needs us, Mark. We can't let him face this alone. They sat with Thomas, who looked up at them, his voice steadier now. I never thought anyone would find me, he said. Your son, he saved me. Julia's eyes widened. Liam? How? He saw me, Thomas murmured, through the cracks, kept looking. Julia's heart swelled. Her little boy's fear had been a beacon, guiding her to this moment. Thomas, we're here for you, Mark said firmly. We'll get you through this. Thomas's eyes glistened. I don't know how to thank you. Julia smiled. Just heal. That's enough. She called the police, explaining Thomas's story, her voice steady with purpose. An officer arrived, taking Thomas's statement as he recounted his brother's betrayal. My brother, Daniel, Thomas said, his voice breaking. He beat me, left me to die. The officer nodded grimly. We'll investigate. He won't get away with this. Julia stood by Thomas, her hand on his shoulder, a silent promise of support. Days later, Thomas grew stronger, his spirit lifting with Julia and Mark's care. One afternoon, Julia brought Liam to meet him, watching as her son approached shyly. Hi, Thomas, Liam said, his voice small but clear, his fear replaced with curiosity. Thomas smiled, weak but warm. Hi, Liam. You're my hero, you know that? Liam beamed, clutching Julia's hand, a bond forming in that quiet moment. The police called soon after. Daniel had been arrested, charged with assault and attempted murder. He confessed, the officer said. Couldn't deny the evidence. Your call saved a life. Julia exhaled, relief washing over her. Justice, a weight lifted from her chest. She turned to Thomas, now sitting up in bed. It's over. You're free. Thomas nodded, tears spilling. Because of you and Liam, I owe you everything. Julia brought Thomas home after his discharge, welcoming him into their family. Liam took to him like an uncle, his laughter returning, the mailbox no longer a shadow. One evening, as they sat together, Thomas spoke, his voice soft with gratitude. I was lost in that darkness, he said. You gave me light, a home. Julia smiled, her heart full. You're part of us now, Thomas. Always. Mark joined them, ruffling Liam's hair. This house is yours too. No more shadows. Thomas looked at them, then at Liam, his eyes shining. Family. I never thought I'd have this. Liam climbed into his lap, giggling. You're fun, Thomas. Stay forever? Thomas laughed, a sound of pure joy. Forever sounds perfect, little man. Julia watched, tears prickling her eyes. Their compassion had rewritten a broken story. Weeks later, Thomas settled in, his strength returning, his smile a daily gift. One morning, as they sat in the yard, Julia asked, "Feeling at home, Thomas?" He nodded, the sun warming his face. "More than I've ever been." "Thank you," Julia squeezed his hand. "No thanks needed. You've brought us joy too." The mailbox stood outside, just a mailbox now, its menace dissolved by truth and love. The story of Thomas, Julia, and Liam became a quiet legend in Elmwood. It spread as a reminder. Sometimes fear hides a plea, and compassion unveils a life. Julia's patience, Liam's silent courage, had turned a shadow into a bond unbreakable. If you like this story, please give it a like. Subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps us sharing tales like this. We're so grateful. See you soon.